Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Calvin Coyles here with the incredible Tyler Foley, who is a speaker, an author, an actor, a performer, a keynote. Literally, you write a full list and a bio about all the things that he's been involved in, and a lot of TV shows or movies that you might have seen as well. Tyler's been part of as well. He comes hot off the press tour of his new book, The Power to Speak Naked, which is he's already had over 1,000 copies sold. It goes live September 7th. Tyler.
That's correct, Alan.
So we're going to be putting a link up in the bio. You want to make sure you grab a copy of this book as well. Obviously, over the last 8 years, we've built a career and a business around speaking and training and educating people. So it's always fascinating to hear things from a different perspective and to understand how to better engage and connect and captivate your audience as well, which is what Tyler's here to share with us. So very excited to have you, brother, on the call. I appreciate it. It's late in the evening for you in Calgary, so thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for getting up early in the morning in Perth and having me on the show. Yeah. I think it'll be a really fun discussion that you and I get to have anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, give everyone a bit of a backstory. How do you come into being an actor and a professional speaker and a keynote speaker? Tell me a bit about that journey and that backstory. Give us the origin story of Tyler.
Well, it's funny. It's really circuitous is how it starts. So when I was 6 years old, my father passed away. And
Sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. My mom was looking for an outlet for me. I didn't really outwardly grieve my father's passing for probably 6 years. And so theater kind of became that outlet where I got to express myself. I got to have play, dress up, just be different and take on different emotions. And so I got started in theater very, very, very early, and then started moving into film and television in my early to late teens. And that transition was a really fun one too. But when you start acting when you're 6 years old, by the time you're 25, you've had a 20-year career. Yeah. And so I retired from acting at the ripe age of 25 and went back to school, got an engineering discipline, and started my own business doing map making. So I specialized in aerial photography, LiDAR, and photogrammetry. Had a fleet of planes, 3 planes.
As you do.
As you do when you're into an aerial photography firm. And I got this really cool mobile scanning cart, and then we started specializing in interior mobile mapping. The problem is I could see all of the applications for it, but nobody else could. We were about 10 years ahead of the curve because this was 2010 when I started that business. And unfortunately, I had a lot of different circumstances go wrong with that venture, and it collapsed around 2012, 2013. Right. And when you're specializing in mapping, your primary client is the government. And usually when you're working for the government, and you'll know this, Australia is the same as Canada, is the same as the US, the same as the UK. They want you to have a safety system in place, some kind of health and safety management system. And so I had taken all of this training to put together this safety system for my company. And when the business collapsed, I still had all the training. Right. And a friend of mine who is a considerably more skilled businessman than I am asked me if I'd be interested in being a safety officer on a very large commercial construction site that they had bid on. And I said, sure, why not? So he paid for me to get a little bit of extra training. And now all of a sudden I've gone from actor to surveyor, business owner, to health and safety professional. And I'm up in the middle of nowhere, northern Canada, middle of the bush, building this massive infrastructure project, and working with guys that are half my age and considerably better skilled laborers than me. And subsequently, they didn't want to listen to anything that I had to say because I was just a safety guy. Yeah. And I remember they had some executives coming on to the site to take a look around for, a milestone completion tour. And the guys just weren't doing anything that they should be. And I was yelling, and I saw a couple of guys that were up there 18, 20 feet in the air. They weren't tied off. And I went off on a rant. And I was like, listen, I used to make a living jumping out of windows, 6-story windows. And if I could walk out of that with enough gumption to yell at you right now, surely you can do it. Like, I was way safer jumping out of a window than what you're doing right now. And an executive heard that, and he had me speak up again in one of the toolbox meetings the following day. He just said, "Hey, tell us about the thing." So I went on to tell him about how when I was early 20s, and doing film and television still.
Yeah.
Now, one of the jobs that I had was doing stunt work, and I talked about all of the engineering that went into putting together the 2 seconds that you see on film. You know, the months of planning, weeks of training, days of preparation that go into one 5-second blip on celluloid. And afterwards, one of the other executives who was on the site came to me and he said, "That was really interesting. You know, could you tell me more about it?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And we started having a conversation. He asked me if I'd like to do a keynote presentation for their annual safety stand down. I said, "Sure. What's a keynote?" So I had to go and figure out what a keynote was. And then when I realized that I could make the same amount of money that I'd make in a month as a safety officer in 1 hour doing a keynote presentation, I was like, okay, this safety gig is done now. Like I'm passing that ball. And I started specializing in the safety training. And I had so many safety professionals come up to me because unfortunately safety gets a bad rap. It's really boring. And people don't want to listen. And so I'd have all these safety professionals and they'd be like, "That's so how you tell it is so fascinating. How do you do it?" I was like, "Oh, it's easy. Like it's really not that difficult. This is how you tell a story. This is how you make it impactful. This is how you take it out of being boring."
Yeah.
And then I started training these people. And the next thing I know, not only do I have this entire business as a keynote presenter and speaker, but then I have this entire other industry training people on how to speak better. And now it's branched out. It's not just safety professionals anymore. Now I'm doing it. I primarily work with charities, to be honest. They're the people that I have the most passion helping, is the people whose stories really matter.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. And look, hey, to be fair, if you can sell and make safety passionate and inspirational and engaging, then a charity story is a much better script to work with, right? So it's much better.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the business model for you as a keynote speaker. You know, what you do in terms of that being, we have obviously a lot of clients that are speakers and educators that maybe do their own seminars and events through social media marketing, but you know, there's a lot of people I speak to that are interested in becoming a keynote speaker. So talk to me a little bit about the pros and cons of that business model for you and how you go about getting and securing gigs and what's the market rates, that sort of stuff. Give us a bit of an insight into what it looks like to be a keynote speaker in Calgary.
Well, so the market rate, first of all, varies speaker to speaker to speaker. So the first thing that I would suggest anybody to do is know what your magic number is and just stick with it. Right. For me, I've always been a $5,000 speaker, and the more in demand I've had, it's still $5,000.
Right.
It's just that's what it is. Some people can't afford it, and so I look at, well, how can I get $5,000 worth of value out of this presentation? If you can only pay me $2,500, that's fine. But what other opportunities are there? Because there's so many different. I think people get too hung up on the dollar figure, and they don't see the value.
Yeah.
Like what is the value that you can provide, and subsequently, if you provide that value, what value can you get back?
Yes.
So for me, I've always just been like, and my manager yells at me, "Oh man, she wants me to up my rates to, you know, in the 7,500, 10K for an hour presentation." And I go, yeah, I could. And yeah, we'd probably get better clients and I wouldn't have to travel as much, but I still enjoy the travel, especially after 18-month hiatus.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I really enjoy the travel. So, you know, as long as my travel's being covered, my hotel's being covered, I don't mind being a little bit more of an affordable presentation, especially with how and what I present. I think it's more important to get the message out than for Tyler to get paid right now.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
And it's not like I'm not getting paid. Like, I mean, $5K for a 1-hour talk, that's not a hardship by any stretch of the imagination. So my first bit of advice is to tell people to just find your number, be happy with your number, be it a number that you feel comfortable saying to a complete stranger on a podcast, knowing that tens of thousands of other complete strangers on the podcast are going to hear it and you don't feel like a jackass saying it.
Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah.
Right? That's your magic number. The one that you feel comfortable with, where you feel that you're getting a good exchange for value and that you feel that you can deliver that. Like I know that I can deliver $5,000 worth of value in one keynote presentation. Could I deliver 7,500 or 10K? Yeah, but it makes me sweat a little bit. Makes me a little uncomfortable. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, that's where you stretch and you grow outside of your comfort zone. And I would agree. I'm not going to disagree with it. It's just I know that that's what I can deliver and that's what I'm happy doing. So find that magic formula. And the next thing is to remember that it's not about you. I've become very successful as a keynote presenter because my first question always is, what is your expectation of this event? What deliverables do you need me to provide to you? And usually what I'll ask up front is, what will make this the best event you've ever had? It's usually my first question. What will make this the best event you've ever had? And then I can tailor my message to that and never be afraid. In fact, I would strongly encourage to customize your message every time, especially if you're using the power of story. Don't get locked into a script. Scripts will kill speakers. Most keynote presenters don't have a solid block script. They have a series of stories that they're telling to take an audience on a journey. So
100%.
That's usually my two big ones.
Great.
Know what your value is, and then make sure that you are over delivering that value by asking what the expectation of those presenters are.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. I think they're fantastic questions. And I think it's a great frame of reference as well. You've popularized what you refer to as the method, right? So for someone that is out there that maybe is just getting started in speaking, obviously there's a variety of fears, right? Obviously the first one is obviously a fear of speaking and this fear of rejection and being sort of ridiculed. I know that plays on a lot of people's minds as well. So I'm interested to know from your perspective, for someone that trains speakers and educators, right, and facilitators, what do you normally share and teach to people to help them overcome that? And then I'm also really interested to see what your methodology is for how you structure presentations and how you'd help somebody get what's in their head out into an environment or into a dialogue that's going to captivate and inspire people to take action.
So those are great questions. There's like 4 in there. So let's start unpacking, Calvin. The first one I think that you got to is, first of all, what is the method? And the method is just an introductory program for me. And it allows people to get 5 insider secrets from 35 years of public speaking in a very quick and easy digestible way. One of the main secrets out of that is secret number 2, which addresses your next question. How do we get over some of that stage fright? And one of the first things we need to tackle is the fact that people, stage fright is a real thing. Fear of public speaking is not. It's a myth. People are not afraid of public speaking. So the first thing that I try to do is destroy the myth. And the fastest I can do it right here, right now for your audience. I want your audience right now, Calvin, to think to themselves, anybody who's listening, if you're listening to the WILDCast podcast right now, you're listening in, when was the last time you were at a restaurant? And I recognize we've come out of a weird time in history. Some people had the luxury of living in the Southern Hemisphere and things have been wide open for a while. Some of us in the Northern Hemisphere haven't seen the outside of our basements for 18 months. So that time period may be different for you. But when was the last time you were at a restaurant? When you were at that restaurant, were you able to order food? And how did you do that? If you spoke to wait staff and had food delivered to your table, myth number 1, you're afraid to speak in public, is BS. You were able to speak in public because a restaurant is a public place and you used your mouth to order something. Next myth, well, but I have a hard time speaking to strangers. If you didn't know your wait staff prior to ordering your meal, you have no problem speaking to strangers. And I have a difficult time asking for what I want. Well, unless you ordered food that you did not wish to consume with your mouth, you asked for something that you want. So anybody who can go to a restaurant and order food instantly destroys the 3 biggest myths that they have. And really what we are, and you had actually touched on it. And so I'm very glad that you brought it up. The fear of public speaking is not a fear of public speaking. The fear of public speaking is actually a fear of public judgment, that the things we're going to say in a public venue or forum are going to be misconstrued or misunderstood, or we won't make our point or whatever. Again, a lot of story that is not real. And so we have to destroy that myth. So secret number 2, one of the first things that I talk about in the method, and then again in all of the paid training and in the book, and you can't hear me, I can't get on a podcast without talking about this, Calvin. The audience is on your side. So
like
again,
that.
To the audience that's listening right now, if they listen to the WILDCast, they don't tune in waiting for Calvin to screw up and for this next guest to deliver no information.
Yeah.
If that was the case, they simply wouldn't listen. So the fact that you and I have an audience right now means that we have people who are actively engaged with the message that we want to say. They're not showing up going, man, I hope Calvin has a horrible interview and I hope this Tyler guy has nothing to say. I really hope they both stumble or forget what they're talking about and frankly have no content or any message to give to me.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks that.
Yeah.
And yet backstage at a presentation, the majority of speakers who, even professionals, are sitting there going, what if I screw up? What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if they don't like what I have to say? There are so many other people who say this better than what I do. Who am I to be talking about this? And it's all story.
Yeah.
The fact that you have an actual audience sitting in front of you means that they're on your side. They're engaged. They want you to succeed. And your audience only need think about that. When they tuned into this right now, they would have tuned into the WILDCast for some reason.
Yeah.
And it was because they wanted something and they were expecting that we deliver, not because they were expecting us to fail. So the audience is on your side and wants you to succeed. And the next thing that you need to remember is that not only does your audience want you to succeed, but somebody or something granted you the authority to be presenting. We don't pick second best. I don't want the almost good enough speaker. I want the best speaker. And even if you were, voluntold in your business to present in the boardroom the last quarter sales statistics, you were still picked for a reason because you were the best choice. If you weren't the best choice, they would have asked Sally down the hall.
Yeah.
So not only is the audience on your side and want you to succeed, if you've been given the opportunity to speak, it's because you were the best choice at that time.
Yeah.
All of those things mean that you're great. You're there already. Now you just have to deliver. And then that's where we start getting into some of the other stuff in the books and in the training and in the method is how do you deliver that?
Yeah, it's what you're touching on. It comes so much to the power of focus, right? And it's whatever you focused on, right? So I remember listening to Brendan Burchard talking about this actually, where he had done a study in his audience, right? At I think the Performance Academy or something like that. And he said, okay, I want you to add up the number of times in your life as a human being where someone genuinely betrayed you, right? Where they really hurt you, where it shifted and molded you in a way that was, not unforgivable, but that it had a huge impact. And the average of the audience of, I think, 500 or 1,000 people was about 5 or 6 times. There were 5 or 6 experiences of life where someone basically fucked you over, right? On the flip side, he then said, okay, I want you to think about, and I want you to try to add up how many times somebody went out of their way with no benefit to themselves to do something wonderful for you, to connect you, to interview you, to introduce you, to support you, to give you something, effectively, how many random acts of kindness have you had, not from people you know, but from all the other people out there. And the number was, so infinite, right? There was no ability to add up that number of people. And so on one side, you've got an overwhelming experience of life where people do good for you and by you, as opposed to a couple of key times when we're hurt. But it's so often that people go to an audience of 500. And I can promise you, if you speak in front of 500, 1,000 people, even if 1% of those people don't like you, and they probably don't just because of the way that you look or your accent or the way you talk or where you're from, or just something that the presenter before said about you, there's going to be a reason not like you. The vast majority of people, just because they want to get something out of the experience, will at least have your back and be willing to entertain and engage you. And I think it'd be a real shame for a lot of people, and they do this in life anyway, but to ruin a presentation for 490 people out of what they think the 10 people that don't like them are going to say or think. And I think the idea is not to try to appeal to everybody, but to try to do the best that you possibly can for everybody. And the people that like it, and the people that don't.
I speak to one person every time. I only need to change one person's opinion. And if I've done that, I've actually affected change. One person.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thing is when you focus on just that, then everybody else benefits from it.
Yes.
The other thing is too, right? As you pointed out, Brendan Burchard has done it. Everybody has done the thing. Tony Robbins, right? Where focus goes, energy flows.
As a result, show, yeah.
When I'm starting to deal with a lot of my clients when we're first getting together and they're playing the what if game, I let them do it. I'm like, okay, tell me what's the worst case scenario. And I will write down everything that they say.
Yeah.
And then all I do is flip the script, right? What if I forget it? Okay, what if you remember everything that you want? What if you hit every point? Well, what if the audience doesn't like me? What if the audience loves you? What if it's the worst presentation I've ever given? What if it's the best presentation anybody has ever heard? Right? So the story that we tell ourselves vastly impacts the presentation that we're going to get. And it's all power of mindset. I mean, I'm not the first person to speak on it. I'm not even the 10,000th person to speak on it. So we don't have to tackle too much mindset. I do discuss it in the book and I do discuss it in all the trainings, but you don't have to listen to what Tyler Foley has to say any more than Calvin Coyles or anyone else, right? Like find whose mindset value system works for you. It could be John DeMartini. It could be Brendan Burchard. It could be Tony Robbins, Nurka. You pick. I'm in self-development and my wife won't listen to a thing I say. I have been backstage with Tony Robbins and Molly Bloom and some fantastic, amazing speakers, and my wife won't listen to them. I've worked with some of the greats in the Les Brown. Les Brown opened for me 2 years ago today. He was on stage before me and introduced me. How's that for a nice little feather in your cap?
Unbelievable.
Two years ago today, and I only know that because the Facebook memory popped up. But will my wife listen to any of that? No. But one day, Nurka was on stage just before Tony, and my wife was backstage with me, and she heard what Nurka had to say, and she's like, oh, that's amazing. Thoughts become things, Tyler. And I'm like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? 5 years. You've been coming to these seminars with me.
Yeah.
And Nurka takes the stage, says one phrase, and it resonates with you. But that's how life is, right? So whatever whoever's going to work with you best with mindset, work with that. But know that it is a mindset game. Yeah. And then the rest of it becomes technicalities that are easy. Once you've got over the biggest battle and the biggest hurdle being mindset, the rest, the technicalities of public speaking now become freeing and easy. And they're so, it's just fun at that point.
Yeah. Give me some structure for somebody that goes, okay, well, I've got over that fear and I'm cool to, experience whatever life's going to throw at me with regards to that. But I've got a whole heap of stuff that I want to share and I don't really have any structure. It's like organized chaos in my head. What's your methodology, no pun intended, to be able to bring all of that stuff together in a way that's going to be, relevant and relatable to an audience in a way that can sort of follow it? What's your frames for doing that?
So the first thing is don't memorize a script. Like that's the very first thing is never memorize a script, because memorizing a script is going to take 70 to 80% of your prep time away from you unnecessarily. It's going to create more stress for you. It's going to create more complications, and it's going to create an incredibly boring presentation, even if you have the greatest script ever made. It's just the audience knows the script. And it'll kill it for you. So the first thing is get away from the script. The next thing to remember is that it's not about you.
Yes.
It's about your audience. So what you want to do is you want to take your audience on a journey through your experience and what you've learned from it, but remembering that your audience is who's going on that journey now. And so one of the things that I love to use is the hero's journey model.
Yes, beautiful.
But you're not the hero.
No.
And that's the bit that people, mistake. So if you go and you look up Joseph Campbell and you look up the hero's journey and the various steps, everybody wants to be Luke Skywalker, and the reality is you're Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Right? You want to be the one to guide Luke on his journey so that he can destroy either Darth Vader, the Death Star, or the Emperor, depending on which film you're watching.
Sure.
And so when you structure your story around that, it's the way that Obi-Wan spoke to Luke of the Clone Wars. I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. This is what I learned. The way of the Jedi is this way. And I know that because I'm a Jedi master. So I want to teach
Mm.
you so that you understand.
Yeah.
And so you speak to your audience's pain points and you guide them through a series. And so the next key to that is, where did you start and where are you now?
Mm.
That's the journey that you want to take your audience on. So really, if you want to hone in on it, the quickest way to tell your story and tell it powerfully is, what would you tell yourself 5 or 10 years ago?
I like that.
Where were you? What were you struggling with? What were your successes? Like, let's not just focus on what was holding you back. What was propelling you forward? What was working for you and what was working against you? And how did those two combine? What did you need to know and what did you need to learn and figure out? What were the resources that were given to you, so that we are all in the same state of mind and we're starting at the same point, so that we can take that journey together.
Yeah, sure.
And then as you start to go through that, now you start to speak to, using the hero's journey, what were the trials? What were the lessons? And Les Brown says it famously, never tell a story without a point, never make a point without a story.
Yeah.
You need to use story guided with specific points. So what do you need? What needs to punctuate this?
Yes.
And then as you step them through that, that's how you structure it so that you can tell a very compelling, very engaging story. Because and then the nice thing is then you're not locked to the script, because nobody knows the story better than you.
Yeah.
And now what you're doing is you're taking them through way markers. I like to, when I'm doing my presentations,
explain that to me in terms of way markers. What does that mean?
Yeah. So if I want to take a trip to Perth, legitimately, I want to come visit you, Calvin, because I'm not going to do it.
Come on over.
I'm not going to do it for 6 months.
Yeah.
Because it's winter where you are, it's summer where I am. So I'm going to enjoy the warm weather here. But now I need to come down to you.
Yeah.
Okay. If I was to just plug it into the GPS, first of all, if I get in my truck right now, the GPS is going to tell me that there's no way for me to get to Perth, right?
Yes.
And if I put it into Google Maps, it's probably going to tell me the same thing.
Yes.
Can't drive to Perth. There's an ocean in the way.
Yeah.
So now I have to go, okay, I need to get to Perth, but how I get there is entirely up to me. And Perth is the perfect example, because it's not even Sydney. It's not even Melbourne. You are literally the other side of the world for me. If you and I were to draw a string, it would go through the center of the earth. You and I are literally, I know that because my sister used to be in Perth and we used to laugh about it.
All right.
We're exactly 12 hours apart. So for me to get to you, I can literally go east or west and I will get to you.
Yes.
I can also go north or south and I will get to you. But if I lock myself in and I say, I'm only going to fly on Qantas through LAX to get to Perth. Now I've locked myself into that routing, that airline. That's the same thing as a script.
Right.
Right. I have to fly Calgary, LAX to Sydney, Sydney to Perth. That is my only option. And if Qantas is down that day,
you're in trouble.
Lord knows Qantas never cancels a flight. Right?
I'll tell Alan Joyce about that.
I can't get to you.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same thing as somebody locking themselves into a script and then forgetting the words. They have no way to pivot. They have no way to get out of the airport. They have no way to get their audience to the destination. But if I go, I know that I need to get to Perth.
Yes.
And I need to get to Perth by January 30th, because that's when the warm weather is and Tyler needs to get his surf on.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care what they say about Surfer's Paradise. It's crowded and I'd rather surf on your side of the island than over there anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely better.
Oh, it is better. I know that. You know that. And it's only bad Canadian tourists who haven't explored the wonderful country of Australia that don't know the better. So, but if I go, now I just know that I need to get there. Now I can go, okay, where's my first flight? I can't get a flight to LA. Looks like I'm heading east. And now we're going to Heathrow. So I'm going to take you on the journey to Heathrow. We're all going to hop on this plane. We're going to go to Heathrow. I know that I still need to get to Perth. Now that I'm in Heathrow, I go, okay, where here? Do I fly down to Johannesburg? Do I go over to Frankfurt? Maybe I go through Dubai. I don't know, but I know that I need to get to Perth. And by knowing what the end destination is and knowing where my beginning is, it frees me up to take these different flights.
Yeah.
And again, it depends. You would talk about keynote presentations. I have been the second last speaker very often. And when Les was speaking, Les doesn't watch the clock. And I had the presenter of the venue that day, the organizer of the entire presentation, come to me and she said, listen, I know we promised you 90 minutes, but you only have 45. If I was locked in Calgary, LA, Sydney, Perth, I have no way of pivoting.
No, you're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. But when she went, you only have 45, I go, okay, great. I wonder if I can go direct from LA into Perth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
yes.
it's knowing that you have these way markers. You know that this story leads to this story, leads to this story, leads to this story. Now I can expand on the story if I need to, or I can contract that story depending on how much time I have. And I can always get to Calvin by January 31st and finish my destination. So we bring that plane in for a landing and everybody walks away and gives a big round of applause for the captain. I love when we do that, by the way. As passengers on an airline, I love when we applaud a good landing. I don't know when that started or why they do it, and I think it's silly and ridiculous, but I love it.
Yeah, why not? If you're the captain, you're definitely appreciating it for sure. Talk to me, when you're doing your keynotes, are you predominantly at this point doing a keynote presentation as simply a keynote, or are you doing effectively a seminar sales presentation within a keynote?
I'm always selling because you can't not. Like even in what you and I are doing now, I'm hoping that somebody is interested in what I have to say and will further research me.
Of course, yeah.
But I never directly sell in a keynote. A keynote is always a keynote is a keynote, unless they have said, I can't afford to pay you $5,000, and we've had to play the what are my alternate methods, right? So maybe they can't pay me $5,000. The schools are the best. I speak at schools. A lot of law departments actually bring me in to speak to their students for public presentation, because a lot of law, even though it's dry, you still need to tell a story. And that's what I think a lot of lawyers don't realize right up front, that they need to present a story around their case. So I come in and do it. A lot of times the law societies or the law schools or the student unions will be like, oh, we want you to come. And I'm great, $5,000. And they go, we can't do that. And I'll go, okay, what's your educational budget for textbooks? And they go, oh, it's $10 million or whatever it is, right? I'm like, great. How many students are in your school? And they'll be like, 250. I'm like, great. My book is $20 for you. Regularly it retails for $27.95, but I'll give it to you for $20. You buy 500 of them. Or 250 of them. I've suddenly made more than my keynote presentation. You can pay me the $2,000 or $2,500 that you wanted, and then we'll present the books. Hell, I'll even stay around and sign them afterwards. And that one always, that's usually the final pitch. You'll sign the books? Yeah. It'll take 2 hours to get through the line, but I'll sign them. Why not?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I've made my value back. Or, I can pitch the private coaching or whatever. So a keynote is a keynote is a keynote. Unless.
Yes, with you. 100%. I love it. In terms of standard times for people, if you're getting started, you recommend trying to structure something that you can run it over a 60-minute time slot, a 90-minute time slot. What you found to be the most engaging length in terms of time frame?
45 to 60 minutes.
Okay. Right.
I know that a lot of people, and always let them know. Again, it comes with that. This is, and I would never say that it is a 60-minute talk. I say it is typically delivered over 60 minutes, because that gives people the freedom and the flexibility to break it, to expand upon it. So this talk is typically presented over 60 minutes. What deliverables do you want to get out of it? What would make this the best event you've ever put on?
Great.
And then when they talk about it, then you're like, oh, okay. So you would really like to have a good Q&A with this. Oh yeah, Q&A, we want them engaged, we want them talking. Okay, well, how about I bring the talk down to 35 minutes and we have a 25-minute Q&A, because most of what I would present on anyways will come out in that Q&A naturally. Oh, could you do that? Yes. Or I will give you you want a 90-minute slot? Typically this is delivered over 60 minutes, but how about we do a live workshop?
Yeah.
I can bring somebody up on stage and we can actually show them how quickly we can tackle a fear of, that's always a good one when you can do a live demo.
Yeah.
That'd take about a half an hour. So that can stretch it out over the 90 minutes and I can break up the talk over. Like I'm always flexible.
Right.
So wording in my one sheet is always, delivered over.
Yep. Nice.
And then what would make yours the greatest event?
Someone grabs a copy of The Power to Speak Naked. What do you hope? Because obviously, as a presenter and a facilitator, right, we always go in with like, this is the point they're going to get. This is going to change everything, right? And sometimes that happens, but more often than not, it's something completely random, right? That somebody gets, and it's like their light bulb moment. And as a facilitator, we do like 3-4 day seminars, and so I'll speak for 12 hours a day over 4 days in a row. And it'll be the conversation that person had at a water cooler while they're waiting to get a coffee in line that creates the bread from. Fuck, I just give you 50 hours of my life, and that's the thing that you get. But from a facilitator and obviously as an author, what is the one thing that you really want people to get from The Power to Speak Naked that's going to make the biggest impact? Effectively, what was your muse for writing the book in the first place?
Well, honestly, just on the title itself, The Power to Speak Naked. I want people to know that their story matters.
Yeah.
And just to give them, this is not a big manifesto, right? Most of the people that I work with for 6 months to a year, getting them started. Yep. And then I have a really nice pipeline of really good professionals who are doing it at a significantly higher level and price point that when the people are ready for that, they can be there. But I'm somebody who wants to be obsolete in your life a year after you and I starting to work together. Otherwise, I didn't do my job correctly. I need to take you on that journey. So the book is a whisper to people of encouragement. It's that beginning. It's that, hey, you're not actually afraid of public speaking. And these are some of the things that you can do to get better and more comfortable taking the stage. And by the time they're done the book, I really hope that they realize that their story matters and that they want to seek a higher level of training, whether that's with me or whether that's with you or whether that's with Adam Markell or Les Brown or Tony Robbins or Brian Tracy. I don't care who they go for. What I do care is that the book was the thing that sparked
the catalyst. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, great.
And it's funny that you use that word, because that's actually the name of one of my training programs is Catalyst.
Right. Great. Excellent. If someone's listening to this, obviously grab the book. Yes. They do that. They jump on board. They do the method, right? What does the business model from a training perspective look like? And what are the stages of steps that people can go through with you to become a speaker similar to yourself and get out there in keynotes? What does that product lab look like?
So there's obviously a very large funnel, starting from the book and the method, which is the free download. And anybody who goes to the website can get that. And I'm sure you'll have links to that in the show notes. So anybody can download the method for free. But it's up to them, right? I mean, the nice thing is we live in the digital age. So they can jump on with drop the mic training, which is a very simple, low-cost introductory training with I think seven videos that they start off with, and it's under $50. They can move on to the Power to Speak Naked training videos, which is 16 modules and self-paced. Typically takes about 90 days to get through if you're doing it properly, but I've had students who have gone through it in 4 weeks, and I've had some who've taken a year to a year and a half to get through it, just for whatever reason. That's the nice thing about a self-paced digital course. There's no timeline on it. It's one-time fee, and I give you all the resources, including the private groups and the masterminds that we do once a month. So that's available. And then you start getting into the workshops and the seminars. We have a really fun 2.5-day workshop that is a quick immersion, and then a 5-day full-on seminar, as you said, where you're like 12-hour days and people are speaking. That's the thing that I like about when I do a Power of Influence event. People come up and they're speaking. You within an hour, you are on some kind of a platform or stage delivering material.
Right.
And then it's you don't stop for 5 days, because I want to make sure that people, when they walk out of it, are good to go. Like, if
Yes.
you've taken the 5-day workshop, you've spent enough money that you should never have to come back and take that workshop again, unless you absolutely had a blast and want to bring a friend.
Yeah.
But we empower you to be able to walk out that door ready to go. And then there's obviously the private coaching, right? I take on 7 one-on-one coaches every 6 months. And then they become my focus. They're my children, and I feel like a drag mom. You know, I watch my babies grow up and go into the state, surpass me, and then I just get to cry and you know, have my little wall of fame of
nice.
people who I've helped take the first step in what I hope is an incredible career for them. So there's a lot of different entry points in the funnel, and there's a lot of ways for people to go up, down, and sideways from a price point. And what I tell everybody, and what I encourage everyone, if you are becoming a speaker, know what your price point is and never bend on the price point. And the only thing that changes is access to you, right? If I'm generally making about the same no matter what, but somebody else can get access to me for a lower cost. You know, the book costs $20, and they're going to get everything that I've had up here. 35 years is in here. The method is free. 35 years, here it is. The difference is how much access to up here do you get at any given period. And when you're working with me one-on-one, my platinum clients, they get my personal cell phone number and my actual private email that nobody else has. And they can ping me 24 hours a day, which sucks because I have clients in Australia, and I have clients in Johannesburg, and I have clients in Thailand, and their time zones don't jive with me.
No,
and so I will get a call at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I will talk somebody down off the ledge, or I will pump them up, or I will give them advice, or I will tell them whatever they need to, because my private clients have paid for that access. And that's all it comes down to, is access.
Excellent. Outstanding. Look, I appreciate deeply your time today. It's been a fantastic conversation. We talked about how normally this only goes for about half an hour, and we've gone for just shy of an hour. So the benefit of having 2 people that professionally speak, right? It was never going to go to time. Tyler, I appreciate so much your wisdom today. There's so much that I wanted to talk about that we didn't get time for as well, but I'm sure it's all covered in the book. So I will grab a copy of the book as well. We've got a link in the show notes for everyone to utilize a specific website for that as well, which is bookshop.org, and actually gives you a bit of a discount and gets to support local businesses, which I wasn't aware of. Tyler shared that one with me, so I'll put the link up for that book in the show notes. If you are interested in getting a copy of the book, just from someone that's written a few of them and done a couple of launch strategies, Tyler's book comes out on the 7th of September. So basically anytime up until the 7th of September, or basically a week thereafter, is prime time. That makes all the difference in the world. It's like going to see a movie in the week that it opens. It makes all the difference. So please grab a copy of the book, get access to that as well, check out some of the methodology, and then hopefully become a client as well. Tyler, what's the best place for us to find out more about you?
The best place is to go to the website, SeanTylerFoley.com, and Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, S-E-A-N, just like Connery, SeanTylerFoley.com. And they can pick up everything that they need. Right on the front page is a free download for the method. Anybody can grab that, and hopefully it helps them become a little bit more confident in their speaking.
Amazing. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much. On behalf of myself and Tyler, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today, please leave us a comment, a like, a review, a share. Check us out, of course. And until we see you live or online, be bold, have fun, go make an impact in the world, and we'll see you on the wild side. Good evening and good night.